Anthropic has had a bit of a nightmare and there has been a leak. So essentially someone found a 60 megabyte file within Claude Code that we were never really meant to see. And inside this file is Anthropic's, essentially their product roadmap. And there were 8 features that we found that we thought you'd be really interested in. It covers internal architecture and internal code names for models as well. Also, at the end of the video, I'm going to tell you exactly how, if you're using Claude Code, you can take advantage of all of these new features that are going to come out and how your mindset should be shifting when using Claude Code. Okay, and just before we get started, I just want to put a little disclaimer on this video. All the code is owned by Anthropic. So if you're copying these code and putting it onto your GitHub, something bad will happen to you at some point. So if you're doing that, I highly recommend you do not do it. And I'm not going to be showing you any of the code in this video, but this is essentially all the takeaways from the leak. So how exactly did this all happen? Well, Claude Code ships as a compiled application, and you're not supposed to see the original source code within this, right? But there are source map files, and these are essentially developer tools that map compiled code back to readable source code, right? And these files are essentially only for internal debugging. You're never really ever meant to see them. However, in one of the public releases of Claude Code that happened yesterday, they were accidentally released. And that's how we found out all of these things that really we weren't supposed to see. So just to note, the models themselves were not released, but what Claude Code is essentially a harness around the actual models, Opus 4.6, Sonnet, etc. So the harness and the code around the models was released. Of course, the models were not released. So everything built around these models were basically sitting there in plain sight, and that's what we're going to run through. So really, we found 8 features that were actually worthwhile talking about. The first one is Kairos. This is the absolute biggest one. And then we have body mode over here. This is exactly what it sounds like. I think it's kind of fun. There's mixed opinions about it, but I think it's really, really great. And we're going to go more into that. And once you actually watch this video and I go into depth about every single one of these, you're going to realize there's a certain kind of direction that Anthropic is heading in, and we're going to discuss that at the end of the video. So let's go through each one in detail one by one. So we are going to start with the absolute most important one, and that is going to be Kairos. So this is an agent that essentially never sleeps. It's basically a background agent, and it runs on a daemon process. So what a daemon process is, it's just basically a background process that stays alive without you managing it. Think of it kind of like a cron job. So if you don't know what a cron job is, it's like a scheduler, but with memory and judgment. And what this whole thing does is it uses a tick system where it periodically wakes up, checks your projects, checks if there are any bugs, and then goes back to sleep. It can monitor all your pull requests and will auto detect any bugs, and then it will write code to fix that bug. And then what it's going to do is send you a notification with the fix automatically. And so say you go to bed and then there's a bug in your application, it will find that, it will find the fix to it, and then it will send you a notification for when you wake up, and it will essentially say, hey, here's a bug, this is the fix, do you want to approve it or not? And they have put this key safety rail in there, and what that means is it has a 15-second budget. So if the fix takes longer than 15 seconds, it will always ask for your approval, so it can't edit your whole code base and ruin everything. And this is super, super cool, because it's showing us what Anthropic is thinking, right? So there is a fundamental change, right? So we can see over here, we have today, we're typing, we're waiting, reading output, repeating. There's a bug, we type, we wait for it to fix it, we read the output, and then we repeat, right? However, over here, we can see we have a agent that's going to watch our screen. It's going to detect the bug, write a PR, and then you've received a phone notification. It's all done automatic. So today you're driving every single interaction, but with Kairos, you're not going to be driving anything. Your job is only to say yes or no. You're only doing managing, right? The agent does all the work, and you're essentially taking this managerial position. That is what is super, super cool. So that is Kairos. It is one of the actual biggest updates that we've actually got within this whole leak over here. And there are a few more really, really cool things. So another thing that we have is Ultraplan, right? And Ultraplan is not like the Google Gemini Ultraplan. There's a little bit of a confusion, but it does have the same name. And what it is basically pretty self-explanatory. It's like this deep thinking mode. And what this whole thing is for is it's essentially designed for specific problems. So what these problems are, let's say deep architecture, full migrations, analyzing hundreds and hundreds of files at once, you're going to need something that can think through all of this. Just like we do, we sometimes spend 10 to 50 minutes thinking about how we're going to progress before we actually go and progress, right? So you can set this off, and basically now Claude only does 10 to 30 seconds of surface level planning, but using this new mode, Ultraplan, it's going to think for up to 30 minutes. And this is all going to run within a remote cloud container running on with Anthropic's most powerful model. So right now that'd be Opus 4.6. So I'm going to tell you for free, this is absolutely going to cook your credits, and it's definitely not for everyday use. I think it's just going to be for things when you need a senior engineer to think through things. This is basically a substitute for that. So that's feature number 2, and that is Ultraplan. Now we got feature number 3, which is my favorite, but it's very much a hit and a miss. This very much suits me. And essentially it's a buddy system. And of course, this would be my favorite. It's got nothing to do with real coding, right? And essentially what this is a virtual pet within your coding terminal. And it just lives within your terminal window. And basically everyone gets their own pet, and it hatches and it has its own personality and trait. And there are a bunch of different types of pets that I think there are 18 different species, dragons, ghosts, capybaras, and it kind of has like a Pokemon style rarity system, and a legendary one that has a 1% spawn rate. I know some of you are skipping this section of the video, which is feature number 3, because you really do not care. But for a few of you that are like me, you're going to find this super, super interesting. And each one of your buddies has 5 stats, including one called Snark, which measures how sarcastic it is. And there are a few others, such as debugging, patience. I think there are a few more over here you can check out. And this is kind of like a thing we're seeing in the market in general. Gamification is becoming so important, especially for people that build platforms, because now what it's doing is it's allowing increased retention. And that's what this is for. It's just to gamify coding and using Claude Code, and therefore it's trying to get people back to use Claude Code more and more. I don't really think they need this. Claude Code is such a powerful tool anyways, but I guess sometimes doing work is a little bit boring, and this just makes it a little bit more fun. And feature number 4 is the Dream system. This has already been around. I've watched a couple of videos about people talking about it. Dream 2.0 is what the titles normally were, so you might already have heard about this one, but this one actually addresses the most frustrating problem with Claude Code. And that is that every single session, you're going to have to re-explain all the architecture, your preferences, and your past decisions to the agent to provide it with some context. But what the Dream system is going to do is it's going to run as a background process. And this is when Claude is idle. And it's going to go through 4 phases, right? The first phase is survey, then gather, then consolidate, then prune. So it's going to read your entire session history. It's going to decide what is worth keeping. It gets rid of the duplicates, and it removes exactly what is stale that you're no longer using, right? So this way it keeps only the memory that is useful to you. And now the next time you open Claude Code after a heavy session of coding the previous day, it's going to remember all the architectural decisions you made and how you like things. So then it feels like just a person you're coding with that remembers everything about you. And that is what is super, super fun. And it is definitely a fundamentally different experience. And I'm really excited about this feature. Probably one of the best ones aside from the little pet that we're going to have. So the next feature we have is Undercover Mode. So what's the whole point of this? Essentially, it's to make AI written code not look like AI. So normally when you make a commit, it kind of looks like committed by Claude, but essentially it just won't do that. So it makes it look like every edit's been done by a human developer. This is especially useful for large companies or enterprise companies that are building code and obviously use Claude within their code base, and their clients might be a little bit apprehensive to the fact that they're using AI. So it's just to essentially get rid of the fact that it doesn't look like it's being written by AI by looking like it's being written by a human. It's literally just a perception management tool first and foremost. This one's not that big of a one, largely for, I guess, the people that are watching this video, but I guess some enterprises will find it useful. And another one, which is one of my favorites, is Coordinator Mode. So what Coordinator Mode is essentially a multi-agent harness architecture built natively into Claude Code. So this way you can use multiple agents working all at once to do like a complex task. So instead of one agent working through a complex task, you're going to have multiple specialized agents in parallel, all working simultaneously. And essentially it supports background tasks that continue while you focus on other things that you might be doing in Claude Code. But this is currently hidden as an internal feature, which means it's kind of experimental or it's being staged for gradual rollout. But the architecture is already built and it's sitting there in the code, which was shown by the release. This is similar to Anti-Gravity, who already have something similar where you can have multiple agents working at once. I'm going to wonder if these agents over here can all communicate with each other or not, and how they'd all communicate with each other. We're just going to have to wait and see on that one. And then we have frustration detection. This one makes me laugh, right? So what Anthropic are doing is anytime you say something that seems like you're annoyed, right? They have a list of some words that they use. Swear words are namely one of them. And then they have a few more like, oh my God, what are you doing? Angry words, repeated questions. So for example, or if you keep typing continue into the chatbot, then it kind of shows that, if you keep typing continue, that the agent keeps stopping, which is not great for Anthropic and it's not great for user experience, right? So they're tracking all of this, so then they can understand where we get frustrated ultimately. And this is where they use to find if Claude, where it all falls short, right? And how they can go and improve Claude over time. And every single time you have typed something irritated into the chatbot, like, please fix this or I will get angry, it is probably being recorded in this data set somewhere. And lastly, we have model code names over here. This is essentially to show you that, for example, Capybara is probably for their flagship or for the big one. I think there is a rumored model called Mythos online, which might also be Capybara. I'm not really too sure. And then you have Fenwick, which is Sonnet. And then you have Numbat, which is Haiku, which is, of course, their smallest model. These are just code names that tell us that all of these models are still in active development. But really, they tell us nothing about how it's going to ship. We just know what these code names are called. So what does this all mean and what does this all point to, right? And the bigger picture from this release, right? So the bigger picture is, it seems like Claude Code is working its way to an agent OS, right? Kairos goes and makes Claude proactive. It acts without it needing to be asked. It finds literally the bugs and then solves them. It is autonomous. Then you have coordinator mode. This is making multiple agents work simultaneously to do large projects in one go, all simultaneously and autonomously. Then we have the dream is persistent. Every session builds on the last. These are not like improvements to the chat interface, but this is what they're building, is an infrastructure for a fully autonomous agent platform, like an employee in your pocket. And what Anthropic is using internally for agents is the word operating system, which is really, really important. So the goal is the developer, you and I, are going to be managers, and the agents are going to be our employees. That is the whole point. We direct, we approve results, and then the agent goes and does the work. And we can see this has always been kind of the end goal for AI as it stands, and Anthropic are basically working towards that goal right now as we speak. And the direction of travel is very, very clear. There are two things I want you to take away from this leak. The first one is Claude Code is becoming an operating system for agents, not really a coding assistant. They're building out co-work, which is also a similar kind of thing, just for non-technical people. And literally it is becoming a tool where we can just go and ask it to do tasks for us. Always on, parallel, persistent, and proactive. That is literally what Anthropic is building. It's building an employee that does not sleep, eat, or do anything. It literally just works, and that's literally it. And the second is that the developer role, for now, which is what kind of Claude Code is made for, is changing as well. The skill is moving from prompt engineering to building out agent infrastructure. What agent is going to do what? How are we going to deploy each agent in certain ways to get to the outcome we need to get to? That is what is becoming super, super important. So we need to stop optimizing for prompt and start optimizing for systems and agent infrastructure and how we're going to deploy these agents for the specific task we're looking to complete. So there we go. If you enjoyed that and you enjoyed the little TLDR of all the different updates to what was leaked, then I'd appreciate if you'd interact with this video, subscribe, follow, etc. If you want to go more in depth into how to use AI and how to use Claude Code, then check out my community. Thank you so much, and I'll catch you in the next one. Cheers.